All right, guys, so new tutorial today. I want to talk to you today about structuring your tracks, how to make sure that your music is constantly moving forward and you're not boring your listeners, you're not boring the supervisor or the editor that's going through tracks trying to find the right one. And this track that came in today that I wanted to work with was from Harry, and he did a really cool attempt at the rock slash orchestral album that I'm offering to you guys. However, it's a little outside of what I'm looking for. I'm looking for more of that raw, aggressive. It can be chill as well, but I need it to be a lot more in the rock slash orchestral lane. This one's definitely in the rock lane, but it kind of goes into the, as it is now, a little bit more experimental, which is cool though. It's got this like indie rock vibe to it. And I definitely can see a lot of licensing potential with this track, and that's why I wanted to work with it. But it is a little outside of what I was asking for. So just for you guys that are going to be continuously submitting music, or you want to keep submitting your music, just make sure you go back to those references that I put in that post. Okay, you got to listen to those and kind of see what is the emotion and the vibe that those tracks are bringing. That's what you got to bring to your tracks as well. But nonetheless, this is a great track, and we're going to show you how I basically restructured his track, how I think it could be better arranged so that the momentum is constantly moving forward. So to start off with, I'm going to play his track as it is now, just the first maybe 20-30 seconds. We're not going to go through the whole thing. And then I'm going to show you how I started restructuring and what I thought needed to be in place for his track to make it much stronger, okay? So let's solo his out. This is his track he sent me, and we'll hit play, and yeah, let's see what he did. Before we get too far into the track, you guys can see that like it's got a cool vibe to it, right? I mean, it's very sparse in the beginning. It has those huge drums that are just, cranking out real quick. And then it drops down to the sparse part with those bells and the kind of ethereal feeling. And then it gets into this really cool groove, almost like a hip hop groove thing. Yeah, it's just very, it's just cool and chill, and it's got a great feel to it. So that's why when I heard it, I was like, oh, I hear, car commercial all over this. I hear a lot of things that could be using this kind of a song. However, if you guys can remember going back to that top 10 ways to get big TV placements video that you should have watched after week one's video, in my master course, I had a whole section about making sure that your intros were grabbing the attention of music supervisors and editors. And now while his intro does have this really cool drum intro like this, it kind of feels out of place to me. I mean, it did get my attention instantly, but then it's like after all these huge drums building up, it's just blah, right? It goes down to these really soft bells. Even though I like the bells, it felt like, what should have gone there is a huge, like, either get into the beat or get in with those drums. Something needs to be moving after you have a huge, like, dun, 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 right? So I just felt like the structure of this track just needed to be a little bit tweaked so that it just flowed a little bit better, and it paid off for the listener for when they're listening to it, okay? So let me just show you how I rearranged things a little bit and got the track started. So mute his out. What I ended up doing was just cutting out that first drum fill. All right, so let me just zoom in here so we can just focus on this beginning. So I ended up, there we go. I ended up just getting rid of this drum fill because I felt like that's not where it should be to me. I didn't, again, remember guys, this is all subjective. So Harry, you do what you feel is right for you. These are just my subjective, musical ideas for your track. So this is not the quote unquote right way to compose this track. This is just what's, hitting me. And, I've been in this business for almost 10 years. So my instincts, I think, are worth something. So that's really all this is about. Okay. So instead of doing that drum fill, I basically started off with a little bit of a sound effect that swirls up, kind of a swoosh up, and then a crash, and then some toms that hit in between. And, rather than just talk about it, why don't I just play it? Okay. So here's the track as I think it should have been started. All right, so what I did is basically I wanted this track to start immediately with these cool, far out bells that he had going on. I like the way that these bells sound, but I wanted to have a little bit of a boom getting into that part, so I added the boom. And I thought that maybe there could be a little bit more string movement going on, so obviously I'm doing my automation, got my reverb on there. Not too much mixing yet, but so as you can see, just adds a little bit more texture and depth to that central section. Now, it's not always that you just need to add more and more stuff to get that depth, but I felt like this central part, because it's so sparse, I mean, if you listen to his original one, there's not much going on. Very sparse, right? Not a lot in there. I thought that, for that second half, some new elements need to come in, and that's why I started adding these lower string parts that kind of add this other kind of counterpart to what's going on in the upper, those pads and those bells and stuff. And it just helps add a little bit of tension and a little bit of a preview that, like, hey, something intense is about to happen. And of course, he has this really cool drum fill, which leads to the second part. I add that shaker because you need something else right there. It needs to give a little bit more excitement. Now, real quick, he already had a bass guitar line in his original track. I just wanted to hear something a little bit more driving, so I ended up putting this little bass line in there, which he can keep what he has, or he can do something like this. But with this kind of a beat, I wanted to hear a little bit more of a I want to hear a little bit more driving, like thump, 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 some thumping kind of a low end sound to it. So I ended up doing a track like a bass line like this. So you can hear that bass is just thumping on the bottom there. And then as time goes on, we want to go to the next section, which I believe, let's play it through and see what that is. Now on his original track, he has some strings playing these like ding, these accent parts. I'd probably lower those a little bit in the original mix. I obviously can't do that because I don't have his original mix, but they sound a little too hot for the rest of the mix. So I like them, but they're just a little hot in the mix. So I would turn those down a tad bit. But obviously this is when we're moving into more of a groove, kind of a chorus section. So that's why I ended up splitting out the shakers, left and right. So if you guys remember, you can split the same loop left and right. You just got to delay one of them a little over. So I obviously delayed this one over 42 ticks. This one's a little bit delayed as well. I think that was 8 ticks, just because his original track is not quite on a grid, which is okay. It adds a cool like organic feel to it. But just be aware that if you're not on a grid and you're not quantizing your drums or whatever you're doing, quantizing just means that you snap it to like an 8th note or a 16th note. If you're not snapping your MIDI notes to the grid, then it'll be a little trickier later if you want to start adding percussion or tambourine, which I do later. So getting things right on the grid, or at least close enough to the grid, is going to be very useful for you going down the road here. So anyways, and I have a little bit of some strings kind of going there, nothing too fancy, just more like atmospheric strings, something that kind of add a little bit more warmth and that cinematic feel to it. So they're pretty spread out left and right. They're not a lead at all. And I think he has a guitar lead in this section. Not in this section, sorry. Kind of comes in here. As a transition. I love this part. piano in. Now I love that part because it's sparse, but it's heavy and it's hitting hard, and it's providing sort of a counterpart to the, you know, the busyness of what was happening in the track, the section before it. And I felt like the second half, rather than just repeating over and over again, I had a really cool sparse little piano part on the top, kind of a creepy little piano line that just adds a little bit more texture and depth to the second half of that section. Drops away, comes back. Now this is just like the intro, if you remember, just like the central part, but we've added a new element, some new cool percussion. So these are just 2 loops that I'm using out of, I think it's the Evolved one again. Yeah, Evolved Mutations. Okay, now in this next section, well, first, before we go there, so yeah, we're repeating a part here, basically. I mean, I basically copied and pasted this entire part from our intro over here. So, but as I told you probably many times already, they want, music supervisors and editors want options. They don't want to have a same part looped over. They don't need that same section looped 2 times, 3 times in a track. So if you're going to repeat any section, you better be adding something new to this new version. So in this version, I'm just adding a simple little percussion. So if they want to use this version without, or this section without the percussion, they got the intro, right? Or if they want it with the percussion, they have this. I also added some of the bass into this kind of breakdown part, we'll call it. So it's got a little bit more growl to it. A little more low end as opposed to this one. There's no low end to that one, right? So, you know, you just give them options, right? They love options. They're going to use more and more of your track if you give them those options. Now, for the last sort of couple of sections here, he has a really screaming, wild guitar solo, which he ended up panning, I think, off to the right. Now with the kind of production that I'm adding to this track, I probably would pull that lead right into the center because I want that to be the focus point of the track. But, you know, he had his other ideas when he was making this track, so it's fine as it is now. But I would, because this is a part where there's a new, really crazy, wild guitar track coming in, I would probably introduce that solo like right here. I have a little, maybe like a 1-bar lead of that guitar solo coming in to give you a hint that something's coming, right? Because right now there's nothing there to let you know that a guitar solo is coming. It sounds like this. Goes into this wailing thing, but what I would do is probably have that guitar just kind of squealing and maybe building up right in this like drum filler right here, you know, something like that, whatever. You just need to like kind of like cue your listener that a change is coming. So when you have big startling new things coming into your track, especially a lead, you might sometimes want to give them a hint that it's coming. Okay, I threw some tambourines right down the center. It's just this tambourine loop. And when you add it with the shakers, we were split out left and right. Just get this nice, cool, you know, feel for the chorus. I will say that adding tambourines and shakers to your choruses will instantly make them feel more like choruses. So if you're having a hard time figuring out how do I make my choruses sound bigger or my hook section sound bigger, throwing out some shakers, percussion, tambourines, that kind of thing, always basically makes those choruses sound like they're choruses. It just sounds like more of an anthemic kind of a part of your song. So it's just a little trick that I normally do for my choruses. Not always, obviously, but many times it does help add some cool just texture to that. I have some strings going, and then there's a really cool, he did this really cool turnaround part right here. I'll show you. I like that little surprise. Now, I obviously have chopped and, you know, screwed up his original arrangement so much now, though. But he did this really cool little, like, 1-bar, whereas opposed to, you know, you would think that this section is supposed to repeat right here. 4, 3, 2, 1. But it doesn't repeat right where you think it's supposed to. He adds this extra 1 measure of that's really cool. I like that. And in fact, I don't know if I might have added that little melody. That I don't know if it's on the original, but either way, having that one extra measure to kind of catch your listener off the guard a little bit and to surprise them, it's interesting, and it's going to give the editor again that much more of an option if they need to have an extra couple of seconds of that clip to fit into a scene or something like that. Okay. So definitely do that from time to time in your track. Don't just do 8 bars loop, 8 bars loop. Do 8 bars, 8 bars, do 9 bars, right? Or 8 bars, 8 bars, 8.5 bars, and do something cool as a transition to the next section. So, surprise your listener here and there. Don't startle them, but surprise them, right? And then it just continues on. I've added, another element, let's see, like a fifth up with the strings at the end. And I think his guitar is just wailing basically towards the end. So that'd be something that he could, basically mix in. And then we end with this really cool sparse outro. So I'll just play this from this section on. So you can see how much more of a dynamic ending that is. Sorry, I don't know why. Oh, this is playing. Gotta get rid of that. Okay. So really interesting dynamic ending. I love the way that kind of came together. Now, actually wasn't his real ending. His original ending was something like this. It's not a bad ending, but it just seems like it's a little bit kind of falling apart, right? It doesn't seem like it has a definite ding, and that's what they have to have if you're going to be submitting to libraries, music supervisors. They want to have that definite ending, that punch ending at the end, okay? So, obviously I didn't play for you the entire track of his, but you can see that it's chopped around a little bit and things are moved around. So, overall, that's basically where I was hearing there could be some improvements with this particular track. It had a lot of great starting elements to it. I thought that the groove was on. I thought the sound of it was great. I love that kind of indie rock feel that he had. But I just felt like the whole thing could have been just structured a little bit more coherently. It felt like almost like it was a demo. It was like, hey, here's the first idea of it, and that's awesome. But it just needed a little bit more fleshing out and maybe some rearranging of the parts to get it to the point where you're constantly feeling like it's going to be interesting. Every 4 bars, every 8 bars, there's something really cool and interesting and unique happening. And again, a lot of this is coming down to taste, subjective preference. By no means is my arrangement the right way to arrange this track. Again, I just want to give you the idea or the perspective of what creating music for TV, film, and commercials is, how it's different than maybe something you're going to do for your own artistry or selling it to somebody who wants to put this music out and put vocals on it or something. TV, film, it's all about constantly moving the things forward, getting an intro that really sets the mood, giving them hints of what's to come, having cool, dynamic, interesting transitions, just all that kind of stuff. So hopefully, this is kind of a hodgepodge of a bunch of different stuff, but I hope that you guys are seeing what I'm going for with this kind of a song and what I would do to improve it. So hope you enjoyed it. We'll have another tutorial for you guys, hopefully within a couple of days here. Talk to you soon.